Fourth oral question, Lord McNicholl of West Kilbride.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
The Energy Profits Levy was introduced to respond to extraordinary profits in the oil and gas sector and includes an investment allowance to encourage companies to reinvest their profits in the UK. It has raised £2.8 billion to date and is expected to raise almost £26 billion by March 2028, in addition to around £25 billion from the permanent regime over the same period.
I thank the Noble Minister for her response. We've all seen the eye-watering profits of the oil and gas companies. The Energy Profits Levy, the EPL, does not treat all companies the same. Many of the largest companies pay considerably less, with their profits and extraction being largely outside the UK. This is not the same for many of the smaller domestic UK producers. More so, the EPL has a more favourable capital relief than the Energy Generators Levy, the EGL. How can the government justify a levy that gives favourable treatment to oil and gas companies over those of renewable developers?
Well, to the Noble Lord's first point, he's right that the Energy Profits Levy is applied to profits made in the UK or on the UK continental shelf. That is in line with other profit-based taxes on companies which operate in the UK and overseas. When it comes to the difference between the Energy Profits Levy and the Electricity Generators Levy, they're structured in completely different ways, and the headline rates of those two taxes is completely different also. We have different programmes in place to ensure that we incentivise continuing investment in our renewables, which is why we have such a great track record on delivering renewable energy in the UK.
My Lord.
My Lords, one of the peculiarities between the Energy Profits Levy and the Electricity Generators Levy is the huge difference in tax relief, 80% and 0%, respectively, as the Noble Lord, Lord Nicholl alluded to. So could I ask the Minister why this preferential treatment for the oil and gas sector? It's not as though we need new sources of fossil fuels for domestic use. Or are the IEA, the IPCC, the vast bulk of UK scientists and the government's own net zero czar, Chris Skidmore, wrong on this?
Well, my Lords, I disagree with the Noble Lady that there is preferential treatment for the oil and gas sector. They're facing a far higher tax rate based on the extraordinary profits that they are benefiting from, so that is entirely appropriate. But when it comes to the investment incentive, we are going to continue to need oil and gas as we transition to net zero. We need to encourage investment into UK oil and gas fields to help meet that demand, and that is something the government will continue to do.
My Lords, in November of 2022, the current Chancellor estimated that this levy would raise £40 billion over 6 years. So 6 months later, the Treasury's estimate seems to have gone down to £28 billion. So just what is responsible for this? Is it by any chance the OBR's estimate of the increase in oil and gas expenditure rather than renewable expenditure by these oil and gas companies, which they released alongside the spring budget, and the consequential forecast increase in tax relief on those sectors' windfall tax bills?
Well, my Lords, there's a number of factors that affect the predicted revenues from the EPL, not least the high degree of volatility that we have seen in commodity prices. What I will say to the Noble Lord is that if we don't have investment allowances in place, if we don't invest in the future of this industry in the UK, there will be less revenue in future coming from UK oil and gas fields to contribute to the exchequer and our priorities in future too.
My Lords, following on from that answer from my noble friend the Minister, I completely agree with my Honourable friend the Minister that we still need oil and gas as we transition to net zero. We can't have a modern digital economy with high-speed electric rail running on solar and wind only at the moment as technology stands. The issue, though, is that with this levy, there are companies who are now saying that they will pull investment from the North Sea. So how do we encourage that, given that we do need this in the transition to net zero?
Well, my noble friend is right, and that is why the government has always sought to deliver a balance between a fair return for the UK from the use of its resources whilst providing the right conditions to attract investment in the North Sea. That's why we have the investment allowance in the EPL that provides an additional incentive for companies to reinvest profits in the UK. And in addition to the point on the environmental impact, the level of tax relief available for upstream decarbonisation expenditure was increased from January this year to also incentivise companies for cleaner production of oil and gas as well.
My Lords, the government's energy levy leaves billions in excess profits on the table, while many households struggle through an unprecedented cost of living crisis. Only last week, BP announced quarterly profits of over £6 billion, and Shell recorded a quarterly profit increase of 22%, handing a further £5 billion to shareholders, now allocating more to dividend payments alone than to their entire investment in renewables. Given this, and with households and small businesses facing sky-high energy bills, how well does the noble Baroness the Minister think the current levy is working?
Well, I'd like to welcome the noble Lord to the front bench. He's referred to figures that are the global profits of companies, and as I've said to his noble friend, the UK applies its windfall tax to UK profits, and I think that's the Labour proposal also. In terms of the investment allowance, abolishing the investment allowance would be counterproductive. As I've said, the UK is still reliant on gas for its energy supply. Reducing incentives to invest would lead to investors pulling out of the UK, damaging the economy, causing job losses, and leading to future lower tax revenue that we've used to put in place unprecedented cost of living support to families that is still going out to households at the moment. So those who are worried about their bills, who are on low incomes and means-tested benefits, they can look forward to more support coming from the government over the next year.
Absolutely delighted that the government took Labour's advice to introduce the windfall tax been mentioned. There's no doubt that what's happening now with the profiteering coming from these energy giants, it just is insufficient and isn't working. In fact, I'd go as far as to say it's almost peanuts when you look at last week's profits that were announced. So, Minister, when will the government actually fight back against greedflation and bring in a windfall tax with real teeth in it, something similar to what is happening across the rest of Europe at this moment?
Well, I don't know whether referring to over £50 billion of tax take as peanuts reflects the broader Labour Party's attitude towards public finances, but the government considers that the measures we've put in place are working well. We need to balance the rightful approach of taxing unexpected profits for these companies whilst ensuring that we have investment incentives in place that protect UK jobs, that protect UK energy security.
Does my honourable friend have any figures for the amount of money when profits are made that actually goes into pension funds, thus and therefore goes to people who are earning pensions?
Well, my noble friend makes an important point that investors in these companies can come from all sources, including pension funds, and they will think about the return that they get on their investment when making those decisions, and that is right and proper.
Crossbench. I'm grateful to the House, and I declare my interest. My Lords, can I take the noble lady, the Minister, back to her fundamental argument that the electricity generators levy, which applies to renewable energy, is completely different from the energy profits levy. The latter, she's argued very strongly, needs the additional investment allowance to encourage investment in oil and gas, but that somehow the electricity generators levy doesn't need that additional investment incentive. Is she absolutely sure that that's true? And is she in any way concerned about the reports that we may in fact lose some offshore wind projects because of this?
Well, my lords, the electricity generator levy reflects a historic approach to how we pay for our electricity. New electricity contracts are often done, for example, under the Contracts for Difference process, which is not subject to this levy. We also have a wide range of other support that we have put in place to support renewables investment. That's why we have such a great track record, and that's why I have every faith that we will meet our stretching targets on decarbonisation in future.
Concludes oral questions for today.